But it's awesome to see all of you. It's awesome to, be stuck here in this room with all of you this morning. I hope that we have all had a great time over the past week. I hope everybody had a great time at the Thanksgiving potluck last week and getting to see some people last week and kind of get to know them and fellowship with them and stuff like that. I hope that everybody who was able to make it to the Kennedy Baptist Children's Home trip yesterday had an awesome time there with all of the kids. There has been so much going on here in the church lately, which is awesome. And there's been so much going on in our lives lately, right? All of us, just for me, right? There's a ton going on at home with a new baby. It's been kind of a dead sprint for months now for my family. And I know just from talking to so many of you, it's been a dead sprint for quite a few of you, right? The past few months have brought losses. They've brought sicknesses. They've brought big life changes. They've brought struggles. And yet in all of those things, even as some of us have been having unbelievably difficult periods, the Lord has actually done something in these difficult periods that we've been going through together, hasn't He? We haven't been going through them alone. We've been walking with the Lord through them. He's been carrying us through them as He walks through them for us and with us, strengthening us to endure all the struggles and the hard things and sicknesses and losses and big life changes we've been through these past several months, to endure them and overcome them. And in that process, He's been doing what He always does. He's been pouring into us. Know what I'm talking about? He's been raising us up. He's been filling us with His power and His wisdom to take all of these things head on. And in a really remarkable way, we've actually seen Him use some of these unbelievably hard things that we've all been through over these past several months to bless us and equip us. But not only us, also the other people around us. So many of you have been suffering through unimaginable things that a lot of others don't even know about, right? And yet the Lord has actually empowered you to shine His light as you've gone through those things in a way that has forced everybody watching you suffer to say there is something different about how He suffers, right? There's something different about how she suffers. The Lord has worked through these things to force everyone watching you struggle and fight your way through the thick darkness these past several months has brought to you, to say this person is not suffering through these things alone. This person's being carried along and supported and built up and encouraged by the God of the universe. Maybe not those exact words, but that's the vibe. In a really strange but beautiful way, the Lord takes some of the hardest things that we go through and He bends them into accomplishing His good mission in the world, which is what? To redeem and restore the lost and the hurting and the broken and the struggling. And over these past several months, we've been talking about that, right? We've been talking about the way that the Lord has called us up and sent us out as His people to be the tools in His hands that He uses to do that. We've been talking about how we are called to be a church for the lost. A really specific term we've been using these past several weeks. A church that introduces people who are far from God to this God who wants to redeem and restore them, right? We've been called to be a church that throws ourselves into finding people who are languishing apart from God, who are withering away apart from His presence, who are trapped in the pit of despair without the Lord. A church that invests people or invites people into His healing. I forgot how to talk for a second, but we're back. Invites people into His sustaining presence to invite them into a relationship with Him. That is the good and unbelievably difficult and unbelievably rewarding calling and purpose and mission that King Jesus has given to us as His kingdom people. But as we've come to the end of this series, what we've seen is that there is a problem, right? The problem is that in the exact same way that the Lord is carrying out this redemptive, this restorative mission in the world, the devil also has a mission. The devil is on a mission to derail God's mission. The devil is on a mission to put a spoke in the wheel of God's mission to redeem humanity and restore our world. And the way that he does that is what? You remember? By trying to derail the church. Since Satan can't destroy God's people, he throws himself into derailing God's people. There are three ways that the devil tries to derail our mission as God's people. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the fact that Satan tries to derail our mission by making us apathetic toward the lost. Remember that? You've slept 14 times since then, but it may still be there, right? He tries to derail our mission by making us not care about the lost, making us forget about the lost, so that what happens? We spend all of our time focusing obsessively on trying to maximize our preferences, maximize our comforts in the church, right? To tweak the church so it is exactly the way that we like it. Remember this? We get the music exactly the way that we like it. We get the color of the carpet exactly the way that we like it, which is, I can't imagine having a strong opinion about the color of some carpet. But we obsess over tweaking absolutely everything so that the church becomes like a dress-up game for us. 1 week ago, we talked about obstacle number 2. We talked about the fact that when the devil can't make you apathetic toward the lost, he'll pour himself into making you passionate about the lost, but in the wrong way, right? He'll pour himself into making you hostile toward the lost. He'll try to fill you with a disdain for the lost, a bitterness towards the lost. If Satan can make you hate the lost, then he doesn't have to do anything else, does he? Because you will never try to pour the lost people you hate from the fire. Why not? Because whether you realize it or not, whether you admit it or not, whether you say it out loud or not, the fire is exactly where you want them. And this morning, we're going to finish out this side series by talking about the third and final way the devil tries to derail our mission. Because his third and final tactic is just as dangerous as apathy. It's just as dangerous as hostility, but it takes almost exactly the opposite form. And that is that Satan wants to derail our mission by making us desperate for our lost world's approval. Know what I'm talking about? Satan wants to derail our mission by making us desperate for our lost world's approval. There's this really heartbreaking story in John chapter 12. I'm going to read it to you. Jesus has just finished preaching and teaching. He's just finished doing signs and wonders. He's just finished very clearly demonstrating that he is exactly who he says he is, that he is the long-promised Savior, King, and God that we've been waiting for. And yet, even though it's clear as day, John says, even many of the rulers believed in Jesus, but because of the Pharisees, they didn't confess it so that they wouldn't be put out of the synagogue. For they loved men's praise more than God's praise. He says they loved human approval more than the Lord's approval. They were so afraid to let the powerful culture makers of their day, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Sanhedrin, the entrenched elite religious leaders in Israel in the first century. They were so afraid to let them down that they were willing to just stop. They were willing to shrink back from actually taking the plunge with Jesus. Now, I've heard a lot of angry, intense, accusatory sermons out of John 12, 42 and 43 that just kind of tears into these rulers who hid their faith in Jesus. You heard sermons like that? Of course you have, right? It's part of the 52 sermons that come in those little books from back in the 70s that all the preachers just got their sermons out of. If you didn't know that, I'm sorry. You have to know it now. But those rulers who hid their faith are not meant to be objects of scorn. I don't think that's the point that John is making here. They're not to be, or not meant to be people that we point to and say, look at how bad they were. They're meant to show us something that can happen to any one of us. I've watched this exact thing happen to so many people through the years. I've seen this exact scenario play out with so many of my friends. I've seen it play out with so many of my fellow pastors and preachers and teachers. I've seen this happen to so many of the people that I went to college with. I've seen it happen to people that I used to help plant living room churches in people's Section 8 apartments back in remote neighborhoods in college that didn't have any churches reaching out to them because they were in Section 8 housing. They can't tithe. So, that kind of reduces the number of people who bother trying to reach out to you. It's unfortunate, right? Another thing, if you didn't know that, now you do. If I had to learn about it, you have to learn about it, right? But I've seen this happen to so many people that I used to share the gospel among the homeless and the hurting alongside. But today, so many of those people are in a very different place than they were when we met. I've known so many people who were passionately devoted to reaching the lost when they were younger, when we were 20, but don't even consider themselves Christians today. But they ended up there not because they wanted to disobey the Lord in some way. And they wanted it so badly that eventually they cut themselves loose from them just to break free from the cognitive dissonance. No, they ended up there in a very different pathway. Their journey to unbelief actually started off in a really good place. You ever seen that happen? Their journey away from the faith actually started from really good intentions. It started from the fact that they loved the people that God placed in their lives. Know what I'm talking about? I've watched a lot of people end up on a pathway out of the truth that started with the fact that they loved the people God placed in their lives, which is exactly what you are supposed to do. It's really important. Don't take the wrong message from what I'm about to say. Don't write down, okay, love equals bad. You love people, you're going to end up agnostic. No. There are people in your life that God has placed in your life. Every single person who is in your life has been in some way placed there by the Lord for something. Now, there's a handful of people that maybe they've been placed there so that you can grow by saying, you need to get out of my life, right? But the majority of people, they are in your life for a reason, and part of why they are in your life is for you to love them. Know what I'm talking about? There are people in your life that you love but who do not know the Lord. There are people that you care about who do not know the Lord. There are people that you deeply want to spend the rest of your life doing life alongside who do not know the Lord, right? And you want them in your life, and you should, right? You enjoy having them in your life, and you should. The fact that they are in your life makes your life richer, right? It makes your life sweeter. It is good that they are in your life. They matter, period. Know what I'm talking about? This is really important to establish at the outset. Those people matter regardless of whether they ever come to faith in King Jesus. We need to agree on that before we can really go any further. They are important regardless of whether they ever convert to Christianity. Like, your relationship with lost people is not just a tool to try to convert them. It's not a bait and switch, right? It's not a fake out. Your relationship with lost people matters because people just matter. I'm going to say that again real quick. Your relationship with lost people matters because people matter, period. You have a calling, and it's a good calling, to love and invest in people regardless of the outcome. We on the same page so far? So many of the people that I know who have ultimately wandered away from the faith started off in this very good place of loving and investing in the people God placed in their lives. And at exactly the same time, so many of the people I grew up with who've wandered away from the truth started from this very good place of wanting to meet lost people where they are. You remember this from 2 weeks ago? Paul said in 1 Corinthians, I will be all things to all people. Remember that? He said we're called to be all things to all people. We're called to meet people where they are. We are called to know the lost. We are called to build relationships with the lost. We are called to get a foot in the door with the lost so that you can share the good news of Jesus with the lost, so that they will actually listen to you, because it is 100% true that you cannot reach lost people if you are constantly putting them off. Right? You cannot reach the lost if you are constantly insulting them. You cannot reach the lost if you are constantly antagonizing them. That is a fact. That's evangelism 101, right? If the beginning of your version of sharing the gospel with somebody is, hey, you're terrible, and God hates you, and so do I, but let me tell you about a special prayer you can pray that'll for some reason make all that different. You're just not going to get very far with 99% of people, right? And the 1% of people who respond well to that, something's wrong. You should walk away, right? You have to actually care about the people you are witnessing to. You have to actually love the people you are witnessing to the point that you are willing to bend over backwards to remove any unnecessary obstacle that stands in the way of them hearing the good news of Jesus and responding to it in faith and repentance. Paul says, you have to actually love the lost people in your life. And when he says love, he's talking about a really specific kind of love. He modeled a really specific kind of love. He modeled unconditional love. Your love for the lost should not be dependent on whether or not they stop being lost. Right? Your love for the lost should not be dependent on whether or not they walk away from their sin. Your unconditional love for the lost is driven by the Lord's unconditional love for you. It's funny how that works, right? And that means that there are lost people in your life who are going to stay lost for the rest of your life. And God has still called you to genuinely love them without conditions. There are lost people in your life who are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And they're going to keep on doing things they shouldn't be doing for the rest of their lives. And God has still called you to love them without condition. There are lost people in your life who are living in ways that infuriate you, living in ways that enrage you, living in ways that drive you insane, who will continue to do all of those things for the rest of their lives. And the Lord has still called you to love them without condition. Specifically, this is the key. He's called you to image His unconditional love for you through your unconditional love for them. Know what I'm talking about? When you love people unconditionally, you are telling them the truth about God with the way you love. When you love people in this ultra-conditional way, I will love you if you measure up to my standards. I will love you if you do the things I want you to do. I will love you if you change in the ways that I want you to change. You are lying to people about God. You're telling people the God who dwells within me has a small, cheap, fragile, threadbare love that is extremely breakable and extremely easy to lose. So what? So your unconditional love is a testimony to the people around you. You love your gay friends and family members, and you will love them regardless of whether they ever stop practicing homosexuality. You love your transgender family members. I'm going to piss you off a lot. You love them regardless of whether they ever stop living out that ideology, that worldview, that lifestyle. You love your friends and family members who work at the abortion clinic. And you will continue, even if they keep on working there long enough to retire with full benefits. You will love them unconditionally, and you'll be there for them unconditionally, regardless of whether they ever change. You'll pour yourself out for them in whatever way you need to, whatever way you can, regardless of whether anything ever changes on their end. They know perfectly well from the conversations you've had that they are living in a way that you're not down with. They know fully well that you do not accept their worldview. They know fully well that you do not accept their mindset. They know fully well that you do not accept their lifestyle and the ideology that leads them to all of this. And yet they also know that even though you don't accept any of those things that they do, you accept them. And even though you do not affirm any of these things that they do, you embrace them. You see the human through the sin. And there will be a place for them in your home. There will be a place for them in your life. There will be a place for them in your love for the rest of their lives, so long as they want to be there. And if they ever want to talk about this issue again, you don't ever have to talk about this issue again, right? You'll respect their wishes. You'll respect their boundaries. You're not going to get a restraining order against you, right? But you will pray that the Lord will move them to reopen the issue. You'll pray that the Lord will move them to bring it back up. You pray that the Lord will move them to come back to you. You will, the way that they put this is you leave your porch light on. Ever heard that term? Leave your coffee pot on. And you can talk about these things anytime they are ready, anytime they are willing, anytime the Lord draws them back to wrestle through these things in a way that they never have before. And in the meantime, while you wait for that, you just love them. That's the kind of unconditional love the Lord has called us to pour out for the lost people in our lives. All of that is true. Nothing I'm about to say contradicts any of that. It's really important that we hear what I am saying this morning and that we don't automatically paper over it in our heads with some totally different thing that I'm not saying. And so I want to be super clear before we dive into the meat of the sermon. I apologize, that was just prelude. There's a whole lot of intro and a relatively small amount of meat here. Not meat, that's the wrong word. You know what I mean. But I want to be super clear. Loving and investing in the lost is a divine calling on us, period. Amen. Meeting the lost where they are is a divine calling on us, period. Loving lost people unconditionally is a divine calling on us, period. But this is where the hard right turn comes in. Every good thing can be distorted. Every God-given calling can be bent into a shape that is wildly different than what God actually gave to us. The devil is brilliant. He's not a big red guy with a pitchfork. I don't know where we got that. He's a tactical genius. He's an idiot because you wage a war on the God of the universe. What do you think is going to happen? But he's a pretty brilliant idiot. A lot of those guys in like Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C., right? He's had all of human history to study us, to tweak his tactics, to find exactly the right way to derail every single one of us based on our specific weaknesses. The devil has studied your weaknesses, and he knows exactly which ones to aim for. If the devil can't make you apathetic towards the lost, he'll pour himself into making you hostile towards the lost. And if he can't make you hostile towards the lost, what'll he do? He'll pour himself into making you desperate for lost people's approval. We finally came back to the first sentence of the sermon, right? He'll try to distort the good love for lost people that you are supposed to have into being desperate to be liked by lost people. He'll try to distort the good desire that you have to meet the lost where they are into being desperate to be accepted by our lost culture. He will turn your good desire to be all things to all people into a desperate need to be accepted by the cultural elites, the culture makers, the influential people in our culture, to the point that you will either hide your faith or you will compromise your faith, or in some really extreme situations, even ultimately walk away from your faith. Know what I'm talking about? Here's what we've watched happen again and again. Here's something that's happened to so many of our kids. Here's something that's happened to so many of our friends. Here's something that's happened maybe to some of the previous leaders at this church. I don't know. But when you become desperate for lost people's approval, you become too scared of losing it to ever tell the truth about anything important. Know what I'm talking about? When we are desperate for lost people's approval, we become too scared of being disliked or abandoned to tell the truth about anything important. You ever felt this in yourself? You gradually become horrified of being thought of as outdated, right? You gradually become horrified of being thought of as behind the times. You gradually become horrified of being thought of as politically incorrect, horrified of being thought of as bigoted, being thought of as unintelligent, being thought of as old-fashioned or silly or whatever. Here's what happens. When you become desperate for approval, it distorts your love into cowardice. It distorts your love for the lost into a paralyzing fear at the thought of lost people disliking you. You become paralyzed by the thought of lost people who currently like you ceasing to like you. You become paralyzed by the thought that the lost people you've spent years loving, right? Like you should. That you spent years treasuring like you should. That you've spent years sharing your life with like you should. You become paralyzed by the thought that they are going to learn the full depths of what you believe, and they're going to stop loving you. Know what I'm talking about? When we're desperate for lost people's approval, we get paralyzed at the thought that the lost people in our lives are going to leave us. Ever experienced this? You become unbelievably afraid they're going to find out what you believe about homosexuality, and they're going to say that you're a bigot, and they're never going to talk to you again, right? You become afraid that they're going to find out what you believe about abortion, and they're going to say that you are a tool of the patriarchy, that you are oppressing women, that you are controlling women's bodies and so forth, and they're going to cut you out of their life. You're afraid they're going to find out what you believe about the exclusivity of Jesus. That's a big word, I know, but what it means is he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me, in John 14. Remember that one? That means a lot of things, but one of the things that it means is that other religions that reject Jesus do not and cannot lead to God. They may have wisdom to share, but they can't bridge the gap between you and God. They can maybe help kind of prepare the way for you early on, but they cannot bridge the gap between you and God. You need more. You need Jesus himself. Apart from Jesus, there is no way to know the Lord or be reconciled to the Lord. But you're an American. You're a modern Westerner. And the modern Western American mindset says all religions must be true. All belief systems must be true. All ideologies must be true, except the handful of ones we don't like. If you say that one of these religions is true and another one is not, that is prejudice. If you say that one of these belief systems is true and the other one is not, that is bigoted, that is hateful, that is hate speech. I am calling the Southern poverty law setter on you. Get ready, you're going to prison. And so for a lot of us, we are afraid that people are going to learn what we believe about so many things. That they're going to learn that we believe what the Lord has said about so many things. And as a result, they're going to leave us. We're afraid for them to leave us, aren't we? I'm going to be completely straight. Those fears are not crazy. Those fears are not misguided. It is true that some of the people that you care deeply about are going to stop caring about you when they find out what you believe. That's true. Some of the people that you love will stop loving you when they find out what you believe. That's true. And that's horrifying. The reality is that there are relationships you have right now that mean so much to you, that are deeply valuable to you, that you cherish, that you treasure. There are people that you love unconditionally. And what you're going to discover is that their love for you is extremely conditional once they learn what you believe. For some of your relationships, not all, but some, what you're going to find is that your unconditional love for them is not reciprocal. There are relationships that you desperately want to protect that you will discover are completely conditioned on you believing things that they approve of. Know what I'm talking about? That any love that they have for you is entirely conditioned on you having a worldview that they approve of. That if you are affirming, they will love you because they love your affirming worldview. But if you're not affirming, they will stop loving you because they don't approve of people who are not LGBT affirming. That if you are pro-choice, they will love you because they approve of the pro-choice worldview. But if they find out you are pro-life, you're anti-abortion, whatever, they will stop because they do not approve of people who are anti-choice, and so on and so forth. This is the exact same mindset that your great-great-grandma had when she disowned your great-grandma for marrying a black dude and voting Democrat. She didn't approve of her daughter's lifestyle. She didn't approve of her daughter's worldview. So she cut her off. Our culture comes up with a whole lot of long, complicated, gobbledygook words and theories to say that somehow these two things are different, but the reality is that there's not a difference. It's the same. It's conditional love. There are people you will lose if they find out what you believe. But here's the thing. You will survive the loss of that conditional love. You will survive the loss of these conditional relationships. You will not only survive, you will overcome the loss of these conditional friendships. You will come out the other side with a deeper joy than you went in with. Know what I'm talking about? You will come out the other side with a richer and wider joy than you went in with. I love the way Jesus puts this in Matthew chapter 10. He says, "Behold, I send you out as sheep among wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you up to councils, and in their synagogues they'll scourge you. You will be brought before governors and kings for my sake as a testimony to them and to the nations. But when they deliver you up, do not be anxious." It says, do not be anxious about what you will say, for it'll be given to you in that hour what you will say, for it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father who speaks in you. Brother will deliver brother to death. The father will deliver his child to death. Children will rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. You will be hated by all men for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end will be saved. He says, listen, I will empower you to endure all of these things. He says, I will empower you to withstand the teeth and the claws of the wolves. He says, you don't have to be afraid of any of these things because you have me. And you get me no matter what comes. You get me no matter what you lose. You get me no matter what is taken from you. He says, you don't have to be afraid because even if everyone leaves you, I will never leave you. Even if everyone abandons you, I will not abandon you. Even if everyone drops you, I am carrying you. You have me. And if you have me, you have everything. He says, I will comfort you with my sustaining presence. When people reject you or abandon you, turn on you, even harm you because of the truth. And here's the thing. That actually sets you free to love people more, not less. Know what I'm talking about? This is going to sound weird. But when the comfort and the rest and the satisfaction you are getting from the presence of Jesus day in and day out becomes your deepest comfort, that sets you free from the fear of losing other people. And when that sets you free from the fear of losing other people, it enables you to love them more deeply than you ever could before. You know where I'm going with this? When you find your ultimate comfort, your ultimate joy in the presence of Jesus rather than in the presence of that person you were afraid to lose, you can actually do more for that person than you ever could when you were afraid to lose them. It sets you free to love people in a way that is actually unselfish. It sets you free to love people in a way that goes completely above and beyond the kind of love you had for them before. If you are so afraid to lose somebody that you will stay completely silent about something really important that affects everything about their life and their future, because you're afraid to lose them, what that actually means is that for you, they're a tool for your pleasure. You'll throw them under the bus so you can keep getting what you want out of them. But this sets you free to love them enough to risk losing them. Know what I'm talking about? You have to really, really love somebody to risk them saying, I don't ever want to talk to you again. When you find your ultimate comfort from the presence of Jesus, it empowers you to love people enough to say, I'm going to tell you the truth lovingly and gently and kindly, even if you start to hate me because of it. Because I want you to spend an eternity with the Lord. I want you to know the joy of being reconciled to Him. I want you to have the peace that comes from knowing Him. It empowers you to love people enough to say, I am going to tell you the truth because I want you to be free from the chains of bondage that are holding you down. If it offends you to know what I believe about this, so you cut me off, I will be sad, but I will live because your flourishing is more important than my comfort. I want to see you set free, and I would rather risk losing you from my life right now by telling you the truth about where freedom comes from than stay quiet about this so that you will stay in my life, but then watch you languish, suffer, and self-destruct in slow motion for years and years to come. For so many of us, if we are honest with ourselves, the thing that is holding the people we love back from seeing genuine freedom and restoration is not that the Lord's working in their hearts, but they're resisting. What's holding them back from genuine freedom and restoration is that the Lord's working in our hearts to talk to Him, but we're resisting it. Because He's been preparing them for the really good, but really hard conversations that will ultimately lead them toward the truth. And He's been laying it on our hearts to have those conversations with them, but we've been saying no for months. We've been saying no for years. We've been saying no for decades because we're afraid that if we open up the box, we'll lose them forever if it doesn't go well. We're more afraid of losing their approval than we are of losing them for all of eternity in the end. But it doesn't have to be that way. Because if we can become a people who love the lost enough to tell the truth, come what may, then we can see the Lord do radical, transformative things in their hearts and their minds and their lives. When you are drawing your deepest well of joy and satisfaction from the presence of Jesus rather than the presence of the people you're afraid to lose, it opens the door for you to be the tool God uses to actually break the chains of their lostness, to actually break the chains of their brokenness, to actually pull them out of the pit, to actually set them free from despair, to actually bring them into the deepest caverns of joy with the Lord. So what we want to do as we close out our time is this. We want to ask the Lord to form us into a people like that. We want to ask, Lord, form me into someone who loves the lost people in my life enough not to be desperate for their approval. To love the lost people in my life enough to have the courage to be disliked by them, if that is what it comes to. Who loves the lost people in my life enough that I will tell them the truth about you, the truth about what you've revealed in your word, the truth about your good will and your good ways, your good design, your good desires, to love the lost people in my life enough not to hide my faith from them, not to hide what I believe from them, not to compromise or water down the truths that you've passed on to us, but instead that your heart for the lost would make me bold. That you would give me such a deep love for the lost that my kindness would be a bold kindness. That my gentleness would be a bold gentleness. That my patience would be a bold patience. My compassion would be a bold compassion. And that through that boldness, the lost people in my life would be set free. As we are singing together in about 45 seconds, we also want to be praying together. Pray that the Lord will form you into that. That's all the time that I have. And so if you would please stand up as we respond in worship through song.